So, for anyone watching who doesn't know me, I am Jamie Sue Farrell, the prior person's much lesser half. Love David, he's a great guy. I have his permission to tell the story because it is not my first-hand story to tell. Brian, being the gentleman that he is, always likes to help a person out, even if that means learning a life skill. This is the story of Solomon Jagwe learning to drive a car. Solomon Jagwe is from Uganda. He has never been in a car, let alone driven one. He walks everywhere. He's from a little village. So Brian is going to teach him how to drive. Gets him in the car, gets him behind the wheel. We're in West Virginia. There's mountains. It's a lot of vertical. And, well, from where Solomon is, it's flat. It's a lot of horizontal. Well, he's coming toward a tree at a pretty fast pace. And Brian is in the passenger seat, which Brian isn't a very good passenger. And Simon veers the car and stops perilously close to the edge of a cliff. Hanging by a cliff, Brian looks to Solomon and says, "What are you doing?" Simon replies, "Oh, but Mr. Brian, I was most certainly going to miss the tree." "But what?" says Brian. He goes, "However, we would most certainly go over the cliff." Solomon, turn off the car. That was Solomon's first, last, and only driving lesson from Brian. Now I understand why he was a bad passenger.
Thank you. And goes.
Well, this is for you, Alice and Bill. And of course, I might be saying some things to you, Brian. Let's see, down memory lane, there's so many that I could just go on and on for days. A good memory with my sister, my boyfriend, and my mother. Brian, we'd have game night sometimes, and the game that we all remembered was Talking Tango, where you kind of have partners and you have to guess certain things. I can't remember the specifics, but Brian would always win all the time, and my sister would not be happy. But he would always win, but it was just great having game night with him. Another memory, when me and my boyfriend first met Brian, it was at a dance that was around one of my birthdays. So I went, and I've never met him before, but he was coming up to me and my boyfriend wanting to teach us to dance, because obviously we had no idea what we were doing. He was so helpful. I kind of like pushed him off, like, "Oh no, we're okay." But that was Brian. He was always looking to help everyone else, and I'm very grateful that he did that, because I think that's the first time we learned like the square step was from Brian. Such a passionate dancer. I want to thank Bill and Alice for their son, because he was, is, and will always be my inspiration in everything that I do. He is, was, and will always be my hero and my best friend. Through the beginning of his battle up until the end, I was always right there trying to do as much as I could for him, because he's touched my life so much. Doing finger exercises, his ankles, feet, head, everything. It was a joy and pleasure to be able to do that, and he's inspired me so much that I've decided to go to school and get an STNA license, because I want to give back how much I was able to be blessed by giving back to him. One of my biggest memories, I would say, would be the fact that Brian made my mom smile again. It's been a while, and seeing them dance and her face light up, that memory I'll have forever. I want to thank you, Brian, for that. I've mentioned many times And I'll say it again to you that you were my mom's knight in shining armor. I'm so grateful and blessed for that. And I could just go on and on. Brian, you're such an inspiration to so many people through memories, through people, thank goodness for Facebook. So many strangers, people that have never met you, never met any of us, have followed your story, have been inspired by you, and that's you. You've brought strangers, you've brought friends, you've brought family, other families together through you. And just like I have read by someone very special to me, I greatly believe and agree that you were greeted as you danced your way into heaven with your heavenly wings, that you earned so much that I guarantee you were told, "Well done, good and faithful servant." So this is for you, Brian. Thumbs up. Love you.
Go on over.
Brian Stuckey is by far one of the most amazing men that I have ever met in my entire life. And his impact is so profound on my life and my husband Eric's life. And to just say one memory about him is almost impossible. I can remember years ago when I was very new on staff at the chapel, and I was working in youth ministries, and in came this guy who stood out among everybody. And it took a little while to just get to know him, but it was very obvious from the beginning that he was, like, hands down one of the most faithful men I've ever met in my life. Super sincere, and he was so confident, which struck us, and just confident in who he was and wasn't trying to be somebody that he wasn't. And he reached out to students like no other youth leader ever has. He noticed people that other youth leaders maybe would have kind of not ignored but brushed to the side. He would intentionally go to the outskirts of the room and find those people kind of glued to the wall. And although I was on staff and my husband was on staff, and we were on staff with a few other people getting paid for what we did, Brian often beat us there. He was almost always there before we were on youth group nights, and he was almost one of the last people to walk out the door. And he wasn't getting paid for that, which was a huge impact on us. And Brian was full of stories, and I could just remember hearing about his life and thinking it was so interesting. And one of the other things that really stood out to me about Brian is that he was such a gentleman. And that is so rare in today's world. And he would like rush to the door to open it before a girl. And that really left an imprint on my heart. And it was very unusual, and I really appreciated that. And that kind of even led the way for some of my expectations in a future spouse. And I'm so just taken back by Brian's life, and I'm never, ever going to be able to wash any part of my memories of him out of my mind, nor do I want to. And my son, Eric and I's son, will know about Brian, and any future children that we have will know about him, and we'll use a lot of what we learned from Brian to teach them. So I'm forever grateful that God brought Brian in, and even as long as I've known Jesus, I still have a hard time understanding why God would take such an amazing man. But this has taught me that it's not even about this world. That's about eternity with Jesus. And Brian is truly where we want to be. And so really, I'm kind of envious of him. And right up to the very end, he was raising his hands and praising God. And that'll always be a memory in my mind. So those are just a few things that stand out to me.
Go.
Hi, my name is Joseph Klaus. I've been a good friend of Brian's for a long time. Incidental meeting turned into a friendship that lasted a lifetime. And my memory of Brian, where to start. Brian would always help me with whatever problem I had. Always there, always with sound wisdom. He always gave so much of himself to others. And he's just awesome.
Thank you.
All right, my memory of Brian comes from youth group, and he's just such a good friend and a good leader. there's so much I could say, but the memory I would like to share is the one time Brian asked if he could participate in our student talent show. And Brian had some different talents. Obviously, he has a lot of talents. We ended up having him share a poem, but he wanted to come in and bring knives and bring swords and do sword throwing in our youth group. And I had to tell him no. And he was gracious about that, and I was thankful that he didn't bring that in because I didn't know what students would do with that. But that's just who Brian was. He was his own person, and just so thankful to call him my friend. He's made such an impact on my family and myself, and I'll always remember him and love him so much.
Go.
My memory of Brian, I still remember the first time that I saw him here at the chapel, and found out that he had been involved in a couple different churches, helping out with youth ministry, and he kind of inquired with some interest to maybe get involved here. And I remember thinking, this guy is unlike any other youth leader I've ever met. And what I quickly learned is that the things that made Brian unique were the things that made him great. Brian always went out of his way to reach out to those that didn't maybe fit the mold. And he had such a powerful ministry to so many students. And for me to get to witness that taught me a whole lot about youth ministry. Privileged to know Brian as a friend. He was one of the few people that I didn't have to be a pastor to. Oftentimes he was the one asking me how I was doing, how my family was, and showing care and really being my pastor. So thanks, Brian. Always will remember you.
Hi, Alice and Bill. I just want to say you raised a wonderful son. I thank you that I got a chance to know him as well as I did. You trained him up quite well. He knew how to treat me. He was a good listener. I mean, we had the longest conversations anywhere. I know, Bill, that you had the phone bill to prove it and how long that we would keep talking and how two people could still keep on talking and still spend all this time together. You thought you just spent way too much time with me. But we just had so much fun. We knew our boundaries. That I didn't fit his criteria, so we got along even better. Your turn.
Yeah, I just, gosh, there's so many things I could say about Brian, but I think the one thing I really want to share is, you know, the first time I met him, he was the knight in fedora and topcoat rescuing the damsel in distress. I ended up stranded at the airport in Cleveland and called my buddy Dave, who was going to be picking me up in Indianapolis, and he said, "Don't worry, we'll get you back home tonight. I got a friend who lives not far from Cleveland. He'll come pick you up and meet you part way." And I was like, "Well, how will I know it's him?" And Dave goes, "He's the guy in the fedora." I'm like, okay. And about an hour or so later, you know, I'm waiting, I'm looking around, and all of a sudden I see this guy in a fedora, top coat, scarf, classic Brian. And he walked in the door and kind of twirled off his hat the way he always did. And, "Are you Michelle?" With a big smile, and was very gracious. And took my luggage away from me. I'm like, "No, I can carry it." And he goes, "No, let me do it." Just very gentle, very caring. So I was a perfect stranger to him, but he made me feel at home. And he was always like that. And he always had a way of, no matter who it was, no matter who you were, no matter where you were coming from, he made you feel welcome. He made you feel like
Special.
Yeah.
Everybody was special in Brian's eyes.
And that was the most remarkable thing about him.
There's not one bad thing that anybody could say about him. Not one bad thing. I remember, Alice, when we were sitting on the steps one time, that you knew your son more than probably anybody. And I remember it was the exact same day, but you were sitting there. We were just talking about Brian. I think he was working with you, Bill. But you said, you know, Cindy, Brian really does love you. He just doesn't know yet. And I'm like, oh, no, he doesn't. I thought, you know, we just have this good friendship. He was my best friend. And it's like we left it at that. It's like that's just fine, you know. That same night, Brian and I are together. He looks at me and goes, Cindy, you know, I love you. And I looked at him, I said, no, you don't. And I said, you know, it was like the same exact day that Alice said the same thing. And I said the same exact, you know, response to her too. And it's like, whoa, so that just kind of turned our relationship into, I guess, a better one after that. Because I guess we just didn't really think it was headed in that direction until he did that. So that was kind of special.
And I know we cared for you very much.
And did you too? He's always made sure, you sure you're not jealous? I said I would never be jealous of her. It's like everybody just loved Brian. We all got along. It's like he can have as many friends as he wants.
Absolutely.
It was just that special.
Absolutely.
He talked about everybody, all his friends. And it was just like everybody was special to him.
I guess that's all we gotta say. Just some more things to say to you, Bill and Alice, and a few words specifically for you, Bill. I wanted to thank you guys again for your son. He's truly changed my life. Watching him go through what he had to go through every day, and seeing his smile on his face and seeing his thumbs up every single time, for me was truly something that I will cherish. He taught me strength in the midst of trouble. He taught me strength in the midst of weakness. Even up until his last breath, I still saw so much strength, and his heart is the strongest heart physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, that in anyone I've ever met. Knowing what he had to face every single day and keeping his faith strong, and he taught me about hope, he taught me about love, he taught me to strengthen my faith. He definitely has had a huge impact on me. I think that my strength has been inspired so much by him that I can smile that he's free, and I can smile that he can dance again. And I know that no matter how weak I might feel, no matter how alone I might feel, that looking back on Brian's strength, it will help me and get me through my entire life. So I'm very thankful and grateful for that. Brian has told me many times how much that he loves you, and how much that he has looked up to you. And I know through this process and this event that we've been able to witness and be a part of his journey, I just want to let you know that we are all here for you, and we all love you, and you have many friends that maybe you have never met before this, and that I know Brian would want to tell you that Jesus loves you too. And I hope that from this you can see the kindness that we have and the grace that we have, and the faith and strength and hope and trust that Brian had through even his strongest battle of his life. So I hope that you can take that with you and know that we all love you, and that Brian definitely loves you too. And to Alice, I've talked with you many times. You know my heart's there for you, and that I love you, and that I will continue to come and visit you guys, and maybe help time and time again. But you are a very part of my life, just like your son Brian was. So here's to all of you guys. I love you, and thumbs up.